Aliens, or extraterrestrials, as you might call them, or people, or peoples, or hybrids, or beings from other places in our solar system and beyond, have been coming to this planet Earth for millennia. It's written, it's drawn on cave drawings and hieroglyphs and pictographs. It's not new news. But what is great is bringing people on my channel, Danny Henderson, bringing people like Beverli Rhodes, who in 1960 through to 1980, when Bev met the being that we mentioned yesterday, the being from Koldas. Beings have been visiting the planet for many, many years. And in 1960, there was a group of beings from Koldas that we reported yesterday that were visiting a group of lovely people in South Africa. And there is proof, and a book was written. It's called The 12 Planets Speak, an ancient book from the 1980s. There we go. The 12 Planets Speak, that tells this story. That book is out of print because what the shitheads at the top do is they try and take all books out, like the bonfire of the vanities, burning everything of value. Nazis and the Austrians burning the books that would educate the people. Because we're in a spiritual war right now, and we've got to remember that. So those of you out there who think that what we're doing is competing against somebody for ET information. What a shame you might even have that thought. I, Danny Henderson, am here for humanity in full disclosure. I speak my mind. I bring my own testimony of my ET contacts, my knowledge, my paranormal knowledge. That's what I do because truth will be shared. And then we have Beverli Rhodes. Beverli Rhodes, long-term psychic, long-term intuitive, many broadcasts here on my channel with her and her life. And right now, she is stepping up for humanity. And she is giving now part two of the Man from Koldas. Beverli Rhodes, welcome back, my darling. How are you today?
I'm well, very hot at the moment. Got fans on and just trying to remain cool because it's extremely hot. It's going to be the upper 20s, 85 degrees, which is very hot for me. But nonetheless, short sleeves. Here we go. How are
Well,
you this morning, Danny? You look gorgeous as always.
oh, well, thank you very much. It's actually hot here. I ended up our broadcast yesterday wearing a winter coat.
Oh,
Oh,
so changed completely.
yeah, and today it's red hot. I've got a fan blowing. So, my
Wow.
love, we are going to get to the questions that our lovely viewers were invited to ask yesterday. So many comments, like everyone is like, so lovely, so great to see you, Bev. Thank you, Bev. So this is from Aquana Healing. Hi, Aquana. Thank you so much, Danny and Beverly. This was so insightful. How many of the coldest peoples would you say are on Oten, as in Earth, another name? She's from a tribe. Aquana is from a tribe in Florida, the Muscovy tribe. At any given time, how many coldest people would you say are on Earth at any given time? Do you think they still prefer South Africa? And do you think the people there still host them?
Mm,
Wow.
that's a good
Absolutely
question.
yeah, absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. So, Beverly, back to you, my love.
Yes. As far as I understand, the Commander Waiora, the superior, after there was a change with the superiors, because there was a change towards about in the 80s, late 80s, there was a change. And he had been running the entire sort of operation with getting familiarization. So, Earth familiarization program. When he then changed and he decided to step down and do other things, he actually decided because he loved the whole of the world so much, he said that he would actually come to Earth and live on Earth because he was very close to looking very similar. He wasn't as different as Jacques is, and he then came to live on Earth. So yes, there are a lot of both Chaldeans, Grandorians, and some of the other races. They do, and they have been coming to Earth because there's not that much of a difference between us and them. They manage to, I wouldn't say get away with it, but they are able to live amongst us literally undetected. So I mean, I wouldn't know how many there are on Earth, but I would say it's going to be not just in the hundreds. I think it's in the thousands. because Earth is, they were always amazed at how beautiful Earth is, with the oceans and all the beautiful animals. And, they particularly liked the sea. They thought the sea was great. They kept walking into the sea and coming out. And as I've mentioned, we had a joke about Jacques spending very many hours in the shower because he just loved the water and that. So, and South Africa being very dry and having to watch how much water you're using. You couldn't even use sprinklers or hose pipes on your garden, nothing. So yeah, they do love Earth, they love the peoples, and they love the ways, because everything is very similar here to what they know. The second part of the question is, yes, the reason why the coast of South Africa is so busy. Also, you have another corridor which is going down through the what they call the Great Karoo and the Small Karoo. So you've got two areas. There's a big corridor that goes down through the middle, and they like that area because it is still pretty much a third world country, and there's very few people. You can drive for miles and miles and miles in South Africa and see nobody, especially if you're going down the coast. You can drive for literally 5 6 hours and there will be no cars on the road. So it is very quiet, it's very secluded, and coming in over the ocean, it's very vast, and the beaches are sand, and very very wide beaches. So you've got the big beaches like in Hout Bay in Cape Town. There was one that I'd seen over Hout Bay. Hout Bay goes on for that beach is huge, so they can come in over the sea literally undetected, because they come in, dematerialize, and move in literally in seconds. So I think South Africa and other areas of the world that have got very very big beaches with almost secluded or very few population in those areas, they do prefer those because they can come in, do what's necessary, either collect or drop off, and
Yeah.
then disappear again literally in the blink of an eye.
I would imagine that's the same for most species that come here that can be undetected in
Mm.
that way.
Mm.
Somebody here, Nora, thank you, Danny and Beverly. Is it possible for Beverly to talk a little bit about Jacques and the Koldassian spiritual beliefs? Cheers to all.
Oh, that's lovely, Nora. That's very interesting because I had actually, when I prepared the deck, I have got two slides that just talk about the spiritual beliefs and what they explain to us. So, yes, Nora, I'm going to be speaking about their spiritual beliefs. I'm going to also show you some of the items that they wear in their own homes. He actually did bring one of them with him because it's like not a memento, it's like a token that they carry with them, like we would wear crosses, or we would wear some symbol of, if we're Buddhist or Jewish or whatever our belief is, we would wear something to show that. So they wear something similar. So I'm going to share that a little later. So thanks, Nora, for that question.
Brilliant. Why don't we get to the slides? And I think it will be important, if you don't mind, that we go back and we share what Jacques, who is the Koldassian, of course, that's not his real name, that was the English
No.
name that was given to him, what Jacques looks like, so that people that missed our broadcast yesterday can just be caught up quickly if they don't want to go and watch part one, which you should watch part one, which I'll put a link underneath for part one. You
Yeah.
want to share?
Oh, yeah, that'll be. And I'm just going to say one thing, Danny. I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you're doing. You are just such a bright light out there in sometimes in dark times. You're just an amazing being. You
Don't make
really
me
are.
cry, Beverly Rhodes. I'm having a
Oh,
rough day.
oh, you're just wonderful, and
Oh,
I
thank
honor you
you.
and thank you and respect you for everything that you do.
Thank you so much. And I love humanity so much. And even when there are squabbles out there in this field, which there should never be, we should all be standing arm to arm. We should all be marching forward and bringing our evidence. I'm not here to fight
Mm.
with a single person. I'm
Mm.
here for disclosure, as you are, and proof. And wouldn't it be so great that we have more proof? Someone's written a book and told a story about Koldassians, and you come along. And there's validation, verification. Is that not the most important thing? There are
It is.
multiple voices of people
Yeah.
interacting with our brothers and sisters from upstairs. So let us continue, my love, and please share
Oh,
your slide.
thank you so much. Right, let me just go and grab it. I have to turn on the sharing. I'll send a request. What's very interesting is while we wait for that to load, is the 12 Planets Speak was the one by Carl van Vliederen, but there was a chap called Wendell Stevens who was the publisher, but he was also was a lieutenant actually, and he was doing a lot of investigations around the world. Now he also wrote a book, believe it or not, he wrote a book about the same thing. He wrote about what he'd seen and what he'd seen with the beings from Koldas, what he'd seen from the Q base group. And he wrote it down in a separate book. So there's not just the 12 Planet Speaks from Carl, but the same group of individuals, Wendell Stevens, also wrote a book. So we've got two separate accounts, and then they pulled Cynthia Hind in and showed Cynthia Hind 12 years worth of work and 12 years worth of recordings. And Cynthia Hind also made comments about that. So it's not just the story of one person. It's not just about myself and Carl.
Yeah.
Unless it says an ongoing true story. It was other UFO researchers around the world, like Wendell C. Stevens and Cynthia Hind, and they all investigated Billy Meyer's story. So it has a very large UFO community investigating what had happened in South Africa. It's just because South Africa is where it is, and because for many years when I was living there, there was this sort of everything was blocked in the media, nothing could get out.
Yeah.
But now it's out and it's
Yeah.
happened.
Well, apart from you one day having a massive gathering in Sun City, which is a ginormous stadium that you filled when people
Yeah.
came to watch you, Beverly Rhodes, speak to the masses on your metaphysical ability, your spiritual connections. So, yeah, so some things did get out on the media,
Oh,
for
well, that's good.
definite.
I didn't know that got out. Yeah, Sun City Super Bowl. There was like, well, there was quite a few thousand people that were there, which
Yeah.
was very
I know
interesting.
that anyone coming to this broadcast today won't have known the enormous backstory that you had, the different, I mean, the awful satanic upbringing that you had, horrific from
Yeah.
Freemasonic being passed around a Blue Lodge. I mean, your stories are, well, they're hard to listen to, but this is the reality of who you be and why you're now reporting, on the evidence and the testimony of your life. I'm just going to hit the pause button for 1 second.
So yesterday we ended on the 1986 is contact around Phobos and what had happened, and how the guys from Koldas were explaining how it's sort of like a way station, and how you can kind of, it's like a bit of a free port really. So this is the one slide that we finished on. So we'll move on to the next one. So this was the slide that I was explaining yesterday, and I've added it in here again today, which is the departure of Jacques and pretty much what he looked like, and how we were all gathered on the beach in Zinkwazi, and he basically said, stand back, because as the craft was rolling in, we had to make sure that we were safe because we had no protection at all. So we all moved back towards the edge of the beach. It is a very large beach in Zinkwazi. And the craft, as you can see there, the craft approaching over the Indian Ocean came in and then waited. It was one of the larger crafts because he was going back, he was meeting Commander Y-Or, and he was going back up. So, and what was very interesting, which I think it's what it was reported in the local press, it was that craft left a strange energy signature across the beach. And shortly after all this took place and he left and we all went home, a couple of days later, about a week later actually, there was a helicopter that was coming into Zinkwazi Beach. I'm not quite sure whether they were dropping somebody off or doing something. But as they entered onto Zinkwazi Beach, the energy field that was left from the craft caused a lot of malfunction in the helicopter's engine and in their surveillance or their equipment. And unfortunately, that helicopter crashed onto the beach in Zinkwazi. Now, that is something that you can research. You can search for that, the Zinkwazi helicopter beach, and land, and obviously crashed on the beach. There were bits everywhere. But that was a direct result of that craft arriving on the beach and the electromagnetic field and the fields of energy and frequency that remained after Jacques had left. So that was a bit of an aside, but it's something that you can research in the Zinkwazi newspapers and
Oh my
South African
gosh.
newspapers.
And that being there with the third eye light, that is Jacques. So we can
That
tell
is right.
people from yesterday that's an image of him. This is the man that you took care of in your house. Carl, who wrote the book, The 12 Planet Speak, took care privately and quietly and gently in his house. This is a human-looking man that did come from the planet Koldas. Yesterday, someone said, I looked on the internet and I Googled Koldas and Grandor, and those two planets don't exist. And I thought, oh, bless you, my love. Bless you, Poppet Socks. It's not going to show up. Everything is censored and restricted. So we have to go by witnesses and, videos and ancient old books to prove that these beings have visited. And you have actually met them, Beverli Rhodes.
And there's lots of people around the world that have met these beautiful beings because
Yeah.
they've been coming to Earth since around 300 before Christ BC is what they had told us. And there's different key areas in our life cycle, Mesopotamia, Babylonian times, all these others, and Egyptian times they had visited during that time as well. And when you start looking back, and that's one thing that was really great is the discussions were vast, and they used to happen for hours and hours on end. And Jacques would explain, have a look at this, have a look at that, look at the Egyptian times, look at these particular symbols. Doesn't that mimic, and is it not similar to the craft? So there are pointers. They left little trails of evidence of when both the missionary Grandorians and the Cartesians had been around. So from that point of view, yes, there are super Earths out there. Yes, there are very large planets that are far, 1 to 4 times larger than Earth. It is possible, and this is another hypothesis that I was talking about after he left. And some of the questions when I was talking about it in South Africa was, well, is it possible that one of the super Earths is actually Koldas because they've just named it Koldas, but we've named it different types of, there's just a numerical aspect because there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of planets that are in the Goldilocks belt, or in that are habitable by humans, which means that they would be habitable by the Caldesians as well as the Grandorians. So we were kicking that hypothesis around as well. So I understand it is difficult, but if you look about what's out there, a lot of it is censored. So even if there was an opportunity for one of the big scientific vessels to be able to get through to the second Earth, Earth number 2, as well as Koldas, then I think they would probably scrub that from the internet. I don't think it would be there, quite honestly.
Mm-hmm.
This is the sequence of the departure for Jacques. So when the craft arrived, it was like, remember with your G6, we knew that and you'd said that they were going to come in at a certain time, and you'd have to look at the sky, and this is what would happen. It
Yeah.
was exactly the same with the arrival. We knew at a specific, there was like a time window, if you like. There was a time window, and you had to get to the beach and then sit quietly and wait. And in those days, that time of night, no one was really going down to the beach. It was warm, but it was
Yeah.
dark. There's no
Can I ask
lights.
you, sorry, darling, can I ask you a very, very important, crucial question?
Yeah.
Now, these people, your friends Carl and Edwin and the group of people that took care of Jacques and other Koldassian men that came from Koldas to stay in private and study Earth, and um, they basically picked up a signal originally, a craft signal from a craft, and that's how contact became. And in order to expedite the return of Jacques, did people have to have implants inserted into their brains?
No, not at the time. No, there wasn't anything. There wasn't
I
anything like
didn't think so, but I have to ask the
that.
question because there's, people with other thinking that say you must have an
Okay.
implant, otherwise you just will not be able to connect, which is not true in my experience and not true in yours. And so it's not. So I wanted to just double check if there was one that had an implant that was conversing and No. Okay.
No, there wasn't. What we did have though is Jacques and obviously Commander Wyor, because he came only once, but he did come, and he was at Stanger, the beach at Stanger, and he was talking about the changes because he knew that was coming. And then of course we had George, who was Valda. So what they would do is they would sit with all of us and say, this is how you align your chakras, this is how you align your spiritual side, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to take out of your diet, and you need to stay away from the alcohol side because it's an interference in the energy body. You need to stay away from these chemical drugs that are available, all those sort of things, explaining all of that. And what they did is they did say to us, if you sit like this and you open your mind and you do this and you do these exercises, you will be able to hear the transmissions clearly. And as we were listening to the recording, sometimes you'd even be able to get like the next few words that they were going to say. That would be coming through because you started to open very slowly. You started to open like a flower. And that was, then he was saying, it's not necessary for many of the races to give or demand an implant. And he was saying that there's particular beings that are soulless, like the Greys, they will implant because that's the only way that they can connect, because they don't have the sovereign soul at all.
Yeah, yeah. And the hive mind all connected to the hive, which is what the people that have been running, or the beings or the monstrous arseholes running our planet, are trying still to enforce us, humanity, into a
Mm.
hive mind, but they lost already. So, but just moving along. Thank you, Bev. Please continue.
A pleasure. So the arrival was the start of it, where we all moved back on the beach. And then there was the positioning. So they had to then get into like a structured state where everything was ready, all of the alignments were correct, so that they could send the beam, which is an energetic link. That's really what that is. And then he would be ready, because it was the frequency of his own body was then aligned to the craft. They sent that frequency down in a band of light, which we all saw, to many gasps, I must admit, me too. And then you could see the swirling that was happening with lots of little orbs around, which was part of that energy. And then the ascent is that he just basically relaxed himself, and he had other things that he was carrying with him. And then he was taken up into the craft literally within seconds. And then the craft started that roll where it was rolling to one side and then moved into position and then whooshed off, which is frame 6 was the rapid ascent departure. So I wanted to explain how all that happens, because I think as we move into disclosure, there will be particularly this sort of sighting is going to start happening. Yesterday, actually, over China Lake, there was a huge set of UFOs that arrived over China Lake. Now, as we know, the deep underground military base that was under China Lake, that has been removed, has been liquidated, and all of that has been filled. It doesn't exist anymore. They've moved it elsewhere. And all of the craft appeared over China Lake. So we're going to see a lot more of these types of happenings happening across the world. So this is just the getting into the atmosphere and what it was looking like. And then we've got that as witness conservation, because they were very clear that they had said to us, if you approach the craft, or if you stand within a certain diameter or feet towards the craft, you will end up having, burns on your body. So please do not approach the craft. Do not stand too close to the craft, because you will get hurt. So they made sure they didn't do anything until Jacques had pushed everybody back and said, please go and stand back. You're going to hurt yourself. And then the conscious transfer, the diagram that I'm putting there at the bottom, is how that consciousness transfer and then the physical body. So it becomes disentangled. So the physical body is here, the consciousness is here, then the two go together, and then they're basically reunited. So you were asking, we had Nora, one of the questions. Thank you, Nora, for the question. The Caldesians do have a very interesting spiritual belief system, and they it's one of those that is literally unquestioned, and the Grandorians and the Chaldeans have the same belief system. It's a very deep spiritual system. They understand the laws of nature, they understand the laws of change, and also we can call it karma in a way that what you're doing will return. And they believe in one supreme being. And they always refer to that as, and when they speak about it, the divine one, they will say that this being is infinite and beautiful energy. And I've created this image based on what the perception was when they were all talking about how they feel this being. And this is the closest I could get to trying to explain what they were telling us. They also were telling us that the divine one has a son, which I thought was the correlation between some of the religions on earth is significant. The other belief was that man or human beings was also created by the divine one and placed within the body of a man and the split of spirit of the soul, but then it never goes away. It continues into eternity. And that the task of man's soul is to make sure that they rule the entire material body and overcome material desires. And that the soul will then be called and collected and sent back up to the what they call the great source. And they also believe that the same divine force, all brothers and sisters, because a lot of our religions have a divinity, an aspect to them, which is very, very beautiful. And the energies are beautiful too. So everything that they'd seen when they came here, they realized, yes, we are all brothers and sisters. They also do believe in reincarnation, but that is a choice. It is something that before that person is transitioning, before the soul is transitioning, before they pass away, they then decide where they would like to go to next. So they can either decide they want to go back to Koldas or go to Grandor or go to one of the other planets and reincarnate into another husk, into another body, or they can decide that they will go back to the great source and take a break and review through their records, review what they had done and what they'd achieved across all the lifetimes that they've been in. So it is very, the thought process and the way that they live their lives is very similar to a lot of the religions here on earth. Their
It's it,
spirituality is similar.
yeah, it's interesting to me that they believe he has the divine has a son, because that's obviously so much of the Jesus story. God
Mm.
sends his son, and the Christians believe that. And by the way, I've actually met the being Jesus, the man Jesus in person, so nobody
Yeah.
needs to educate me on who that beautiful soul is. And that's my own private, personal, truth, physical
Mm.
truth. So. Yeah, so the interesting, very, very interesting. Okay, sorry, please continue.
That's all right. And yeah, I found that interesting too, that there was a coincidence that their divine one has a son, but it also had other children that had been made in his image, of the image of this amazing being, which is really pure energy. So there are others that were created as well. So we used to have many, many quite interesting discussions and probing and asking questions. Well, what about this and what about that? So yeah, it was very interesting. Then he also at one point he brought out um, a, an overview of this particular circle with all these areas going into it, and it is the flow of energy, and that was something that was extremely interesting because he could then show what they believe and how they believe with this energy. And this is again as close as I could get it. And this is an energy which is flowing, moving in a circle. And he was saying, where one of your journey ends, the next begins. So it's flowing energy all the time.
It
They
kind of
also,
Sorry,
so,
it kind of looks like to me like the what is known as the flower of life, that kind of 3D and 4D geometria. Again, a lot of people now at this stage of the spiritual war, at this stage of full disclosure, are saying, no, that's not the real essence of the universal blueprint. No. And then someone else said, there's a seventh arc. that goes off into something else. And it is just so mind-blowing, like what the actual truth is, which is why it's so important for everyone to be able to just just anchor down in their own beliefs and their journey. And then when they learn something else, be okay with letting that go. Be okay with being wrong. That's part of our growth. We have to be okay. I'm so good at that. I'm so good at that. I have no ego in that, Bev Rhodes. I don't. Now, that
Oh,
jewelry, is that jewelry made by someone you know? Is that something that people can get if they like it? I think it's
I
beautiful.
well, I don't know where you get it. It was something that because that image is the image that he was explaining about the force and how everything is connected. We're all connected. The planets are connected. Us as beings, we're all connected. That energy is connected. That's why he was saying where one journey ends, the next begins, and that's why transitioning and going across to the other side. It's just literally it's another journey, and that's all you're doing is you're not on Earth, and yes, you have passed away and those will miss you, but that person is moving on their next journey. So what they had done is he had a little amulet that he was carrying with him, which is very similar to the silver one. That's just the round silver one, but it wasn't a locket. That's a locket. It's just a little disc with this on it to remind him, and during his prayers in the morning, to remind him of the divine one and everything that he would send the energy and he would be the best he could be on every single day. And that was part of his prayers in the morning. And the females sometimes could wear a little bracelet. And then the other piece that you see on the side, that is one of the gauntlets that some of the warriors would wear. Much like, in different times in our planet, someone would take an amulet of their faith to go on, like the Crusaders or whatever
Yeah,
was happening. You
yeah.
would still take that with you, and that's just a visual representation of the different metals that they have on their planet, and then they create that, they carve it, and they carry it with them because the divine one for them is it's not just a spiritual belief for them. It's more of a way of life that they actively watch what they say. They actively conserve their energy. They actively make sure that on that day they live the best and they do the best that they can do during that day. Because at the end of the day, they go back to the divine one and say, I've done the
Yeah.
best that I could do today.
Beautiful.
So also we were talking about I had a lot of questions because I just like to find out things. And I was asking them and Edwin, who's Edwin and others and all of the groups, we were always asking about, well, with all the councils and the different councils and the federations and the corporations, because they have corporations as well, what what is the voting process? We asked, well, explain to us, how are decisions made? Who makes the decisions? Who's allowed to vote? How do all these different planets, which went from being the Council of Five to the Council of Nine to the Council of 12 and now beyond? And he said, well, we've got a record of what we voted against, what we abstained from, so we didn't vote, and then those that we were absolutely against and did not approve. And all of that was in their records. I have put it onto a parchment, and I've got my records that I have written down, and I've tried to make it as succinct as possible. They refer to Earth as Ceton, C-T-O-N. Others refer to it as Terra. Same place, it's still
Can't
Earth.
stand that. I cannot stand terror. 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 Can't stand it. Tara. Can't stand terror. The word, another word used for planet Earth. It is horrible. It sounds horrible. I don't resonate with it. I used to resonate with the other name Key for Earth. Now I
Mm.
don't. So Earth is Earth, Pachamama, Gaia, so many different names for her.
Yeah.
But Ceton, I've heard that in several other people's
Oh,
broadcasts as
right.
well. So yes, so thank you for sharing that.
So they sometimes they refer to us as Setonians, which I think is it's pretty cool. It's nice. So he would then we'd say, well, like what? Now, bearing in mind, this is the 80s, before the internet and the World Wide Web really started to get good and started to become something. uh, most important was that if you look further down, you'll see you've got they stood in opposition to the transhumanism decree. They also challenged the fact that AI was going to be allowed to sweep across Earth, because they said to me directly, AI has a different supreme being that they follow. That is the first time I'd ever heard that. And at the time when, artificial consciousness, artificial intelligence, artificial um, created beings. And I must admit, in those years, I never realized the significance, because it just wasn't part of my frame of reference. Truly, it wasn't. And I was like, you mean there's going to be a consciousness or a shell of something that's going to be synthetic, and then it'll get something put. He said pretty much. He tried to make it as simple so that we could understand it, because there was nothing like that in South Africa at that time. They'd only just started. In those days, I think it was something to do with either one of the Yahoo brands or something like that. And it had literally, the universities were the ones that had access to the original internet in those days. So these just quickly is they did not endorse the proposal to integrate a simulation environment on the terrestrial sphere known as Ceton. And that is, they did not believe that it was right to create a synthetic type of environment. So like in a game, or
Yeah, like the Matrix simulation that we actually do live in. Yeah.
yeah.
So when did this come out? When did you see this?
This was the late 1980s. So
Okay.
that would have been, so that was before the internet really took off.
Right. So they were telling us that all the things that have happened on this planet, they were
Mm.
against. Is that what you're clearly saying to us?
Yeah, that they voted, they either spoilt their vote. Some of them, some of the ones, there were others that they spoilt their vote. They just said, no, I mean, this is so out there. This is a new society, a new race of beings. You can't make that decision and push that on them. So they just spoiled their votes. No, we're not participating in this. Others, they rejected them, and they went on record to say, we reject this. So where you've got the genetic tampering of primates and the Neanderthals, those as entities, they felt, and the Grandorians did as well, that we should be allowed to move forward at our own pace, that we should not have been genetically changed
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah, if that's even true. I mean, everything that's coming out right now, it's like we were this amazing, beautiful, elite race of just perfectly created humans. And then we were downgraded by the Anunnaki and all that boring story. I'm so tired of
Mm.
it. So yeah, it's very frustrating because everything here that's on this form has been done. We have been abused
Sadly,
and
yes.
harmed by
Yeah.
extraterrestrials. So
Yeah.
why would we b believe any of them? But nice to see the Koldassians are, claiming in the 80s that they didn't go for
They didn't
this.
agree with it. Yeah, no, they didn't. They also they had refuted the participation of the upheaval for Tiamat sector and the Ijiji uprising. They refused to participate in that. So, and I said, well, that was, when you go back in the history of Earth, Ceton, there's a lot about the Ijiji, there's a lot about Tiamat, there's all these things that are there in our so-called history. And he just said, no, we did not approve of it, and we did not agree to participate. There were
Right.
others and other beings and other nations from other planets. They did, we didn't. Also, they abstained from voting on the Ijiji succession. And there was a succession plan for the Ijiji, which would then also allow for changes in the DNA. And they just said, nope, we abstained from voting. We just said we're abstaining. So they never said anything. The other aspect was also they refrained from aligning to any course of action for the past societies, including the Lemurian and the Mayans. And I said to them, well, that means you did nothing. You just refrained. And he said, our peoples believe that the earth should be allowed to progress at the speed and trajectory that is right for the peoples that live on the surface and for those below the surface dwellers. So he was very, very adamant about the different types of races above and surface and below. And they said that they would not align themselves with anything. That peoples here must take their own path and trajectory, which I thought was quite good. They also stood in opposition to the transhumanism degree. They just don't believe that that's right. And also they challenged the permission for artificial cognition to be weaved into the psyche of Earth. So they were challenging it because, according to them, we are sovereign souls. Every person should be giving their own permission to allow artificial cognition and to, if they want to be chipped or if they want to have a chip in their fingers or in their thumb or whatever in order to afford.
Bad
It's up
idea.
to the
Don't do
individual.
it. Don't
No.
anyone do it. Bad idea. You'll be taken over, become part of the hive mind.
So they said, they challenged that. They said, not everybody, every human person and those that are below Earth, they should make the decision themselves. So they did
Duh.
challenge
Duh.
that.
Right? Jesus.
And then
2026. Jesus, I'm sorry.
there we
Continue.
go again. I know, and it's just at the time you can see for me, I was like, huh? When you do that whole second thing of, oh, what are you talking about? That was kind of me. I was like, I just I could not at that time, all those years ago, I could not get my head around it. Seriously, I mean, we're talking about over 40 years ago.
Yeah, and it hadn't even
Not get my
happened,
head
Bella.
around it.
Hadn't even happened. For them looking at us, it must be like the French doors are open and a fly comes in, and then it just cannot get back out. And it's right next to the gigantic French doors, but it's trying to get through a window that's closed, and the French doors are right there, and even the wind's blowing, and the fly just cannot. And it poor fly. I mean, they must look at us like we're that. Like, seriously, you can't figure that little bit out. Oh, it's tragic.
It
Tragic.
is, and this is. I mean, these concepts. I think for all of us, when we'd have some tea and chat afterwards and have some biscuits and things, it was like, we would all say that I'm not getting it. I can't grasp it. I can't understand. Even me, I was like, oh Lord, this is higher grade stuff. This is really higher grade. So I couldn't get my head around it. But Jacques would say, don't worry about it. Just keep it in mind, put it in the back of your mind. And then in the future, later, things will become obvious and it will make more sense. And obviously now, 2026, it absolutely is. It's spot on. It's on point. The last two was they denied the empowerment of the Anunnaki to pose as epitomes of divinity or in for these older civilizations. They felt that was wrong. And then they contested the genetic alteration of Earth's helix, and they opted there. Then again, they abstained. So I thought I'd share some of them. I've got 3 odd pages of stuff that they were part and parcel of. But I thought it would be good to bring this forward, that in the 80s, as late as the 80s, they were telling us that this was still to come.
Wow,
We
wow.
didn't understand it really.
Right. And tell us again, where was this information?
This
It,
information was he had access to that information because he did bring some like, I don't know if it's electrical, I don't even know how it ran, but he did have um, this different type. It was like just a black screen. That's all I could see. It was like a black screen, and he was able then to share with us. He put his hand on it.
right.
Maybe it was biometrically attached to him. He put his hand on it, and then all this information of what they had voted on, how they voted on, that's where it was kept. I just wrote it in my notes and I put it here in this
Oh,
format. It
okay, got
wasn't
it.
in this format.
So
It
it's
was
not in Carl's book, The 12 Planets Speak. It's not laid out
no,
in there.
that's not there. There are some things I think that both Carl and Wendell Stevens, they left out specific items, and I can understand that because at the time it was something that none of us had any information about. We even understood what was going on,
Yeah,
and I think that's why they left it out from the original manuscripts.
right.
Then the other book, I've actually put it up there for everyone in case you're able to find it. I do have a downloaded copy actually. I'll send it across to you so that you've got it. And this was from UFO Contact from Planet Koldas. Now that was the second one. Remember earlier I said you've got the 12 Planets Speak, and then
Yeah.
you've got the other one, which was Wendell Stevens, the publisher. He had written up UFO Contact from Planet Koldas. So they're two aspects that exist. So when I was talking about the changes and how things were going to happen in 74, 1974. Um, the Earth scientists, some of the Earth scientists were taken up into space, which was organized. And then they would return, and they provided a lot of physical evidence of planets, where they were, the magnetic aspects between them, and was shown space, was shown different civilizations and different areas, and then brought back. So the council at the time agreed that basically Earth wasn't ready for an en masse view of
Yeah.
these individuals coming. So they decided to back off a bit. The next level recordings then, which is why Waiora came and spoke to Edward, and Carl, and met and said, look, this is what's going to happen. You're going to sort of take it slowly because it's too much. And that's where the changes were. So 1974 was a lot of the changes in the communications, and they went then into the Caldesian High Superior. They went into the new format, which was then, I think a lot of people would see it as both a radio transmission but also a download, which was, I think, towards the end of the 80s. It was then becoming more of a download, that if we had been meditating, we've been cleansing our body and being sure that we weren't, putting things into our body, making sure that the vessel is the best it could be. Others were able then to sit in the room and have and hear the transmissions directly. So there was a slight change.
So
The
you
new,
meant the radio contact. So do they record these Koldassians speaking? Is there actual recording?
yeah,
Okay.
oh yes, yes, there is
Where?
12 years
Where?
worth.
Where is the actual recording that people can just go and get, Bev?
I don't know where they are now. We, at the time, the Cubase around the world, everybody, and there's like it was in those years, it was over 300 different bases of peoples, and everybody was able to listen to those transmissions. The first 5 years wasn't recorded, but then after that, it was all recorded. I don't know where they are now. I would imagine, maybe Wendell, well, he's passed away now. Cole's passed away. I don't know where those recordings would have been. I mean, I never kept them. They were on just the normal tapes, literally, the old-fashioned tapes. They
Wow.
never even made it to CDs. There are in Cole's book. It does have um, it does have a couple of them at the back, but I think he did have a link when the internet came in. He did have a link where he did put some of them out on, as he used to call it, the interweb.
The
Yeah, the
interweb.
interweb. Yeah, the interweb.
Yes. But if people get that book that you're holding there, they go to
Yeah,
chapter 9, page 95 of the book,
yeah,
The 12 Planets Speak by Carl van der Wilden, and they can get some kind of. So, did he type up the transmissions of
he
what was
did.
being said? Okay. Do you want to read a little bit of the transmissions? And what were their accents like? What did they sound like? The
Um,
Cardassians.
they sounded, you couldn't listen to them and feel, oh, that person's from, is got a Brummy accent, or that person is from North
Yeah.
Yorkshire. Nothing. It was just very, not even a clipped BBC type of accent, not a South African accent. It was just, I can't, it was like a nothingness. You would not be able to say, oh, that person is from that continent. It was a nothingness. It didn't fit in anywhere. It was just a nothingness. They just spoke softly because they never shouted, because that would be wrong for their energy. They were very soft and very kind, and nicely spoken. And because they had studied our languages and our ways, they used the languages, they controlled their language to make sure that whoever they were speaking to, or the group that they were speaking to, they used the language that that group would understand. So if they were in a group of scientists, you had no hope in hell of understanding what they were talking about, but they could converse easily with the top scientists of the world before they took them on a tour to show them. And those scientists then came back with a totally different view of things. It was sometimes in some areas a bit monotone, but other than that, there was no accent. There
Right.
was, the inflection was there, but not too much. It was
Right.
just
So just
very easy,
plain English.
very
Just
plain.
to make a point, that book that you've got there, The 12
Yeah,
Planets Speak, someone wrote in the comments that they ordered that book and it cost them £195.
Oh
That is
God,
so much money because they
that's
try and make that
huge.
book unavailable to humanity because of the depth of proof and knowledge and physical interaction with these beautiful beings from Koldas.
Yeah, yeah. This is it's it's 195.
Yep,
Oh, that's a lot of money.
yep.
Now this one was obviously, I mean, it's better. This one wasn't that sort of money. Even when Carl brought the book out, I think it was like
Two
I think
quid.
under it was under 20 rand, which would have been exactly what you're saying. It was about 2 quid in those days.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so yeah, wow. 195, but you know what? Grab it because these books, anyone that's got them, obviously they're from estates
yeah.
and things like that. You're not going to get them again. And if
No,
you're lucky
no.
enough to grab yourself a signed copy, because the same area that Carl went to go and sign his first book, I also went to when I brought my book out a bit later in the late 90s, 98, I think it was somewhere there, 89, 98. We all did the same circuit. We then had the book out, and then we took an X amount of the publisher, and then we signed them all. And he was doing the same thing. So if you get one and you get one with a signature, that's awesome. You're very lucky because they're like
Yeah,
him.
yeah. Brilliant. Thank you.
So this is what I was saying earlier about the free community of interest for fringe and spiritual sciences. Um, and he was involved with making sure that the information that he'd personally seen, because he had seen a lot, and he brought Cynthia Hind in, and they were together, they were talking about the Cubase. Wendell Stevens had investigated all of this material, and he was a veteran, US UFO researcher, and he'd been in the military, so he had a very scientific side, and he was part of ATIC, so Air Technical Intelligence Center at the Wright Field. So he was one of those people that if anybody was going to find, the boogeyman out there and nonsense and that, he would have found it. I mean, he served up in Alaska, and he'd seen UFOs, he'd seen what was happening, he'd seen the bases. So Wendell Stevens came at it from a totally different point of view. So you have then Carl, who was also a ufologist, Wendell Stevens, who was a lieutenant colonel, highly decorated. He was also investigating that. And also Cynthia Hind. These are three people that are extremely well respected as investigators. And they've all looked at the Koldas material and listened to the tapes at the time in those years when they were still available, and they've all said this is factual.
Yeah.
Then we've also got he used to talk about the policy of peaceful coexistence, and this for Seaton, a lot of the areas had not signed the coexistence or peaceful coexistence agreement. Some of their planetary leaders had agreed, and I think that's where you see, there's higher changes both spiritually, but also more sightings, more individuals, coming across these beings. But what I also found very interesting, I'll share that with you. I put it on the slide because it's something that I don't think we talk about. We only talk about the two genders. We talk about male, female. Obviously now it's changed. There's more than that. But also in those years, he was talking about male, female, and brood. So they were male and female. And because there are beings out there that are both male and female, so not just two spirit, but they have brood as well, which means that they can brood another being of their same type. So the fact that we're moving now in Earth, we're becoming open to other types of gender. That's exactly correct, because in the 80s they had said, well, actually, there aren't just two genders. There's more than two genders. There's male, female, and brood, and then there's two spirit, and then there's this and this and this. And that was part of the peaceful coexistence, is to allow everyone to be themselves and to be and claim any type of gender. Even if they want to be genderless, they can. And that was all part of the discussions. They were worried about jumping across timelines. They're called sliders, and that's possible. And the Koldazians are really good at being able to jump across timelines and dumping waste material from reactors. That's and that's why I think a lot of countries don't want to sign the policy of peaceful coexistence, because dumping nuclear reactor waste into another planetary atmosphere, which can happen, and other planets have done that, and they are obviously in direct infringement of the policy. You can't dump nuclear waste into somebody else's planet. Then it's going to be difficult for planet Earth, particularly those countries that have a lot of nuclear activity, because they need to find a place to be able to dump the waste. And dumping it in somebody else's backyard is not peaceful. So that was something that I found quite interesting, because in those years, we knew nuclear was happening. There was that big scare across the world, and people went on marches, no nuclear, this, whatever. But they thought about the possibilities of making trouble, but they didn't think about how did they get there and what did they do with the waste, because there is a lot of waste from nuclear. And then we go on to the closing view. So they have a closing view, and they're in their own language. When they left, this is something that they would say, which is Jaka Kitslako, Jaka Lando, which is their saying of we will meet again. And I did ask at the time, I had asked some of the tribes, native tribes in South Africa, I'd said those, and some of them kind of had a resonance and understood that and felt that that was part of an ancient language of their culture. But also in America, the First Nation American tribes, the Indian tribes, some of the Indian tribes, perhaps the traditional Creek language or the traditional Muskogee language, or some of the others, this Jaka, Kitslako, that those two phrases are very similar. And if you hear their language, traditional language spoken, some of that does resonate. So I've just found that would be something interesting to start researching, which I might have a look further into. But Koldazians and Grandorians had been here from 300 BC, 600 BC, and they had a lot of interface as visitors with their presences. And then in 1100 after Christ, in India and the Americas. So they shared their spiritual energy. They shared very native tribes. They shared what they did. And this is why you see across pretty much as a golden thread in a way from different tribes, including in South Africa and Australia. And I've asked these questions all over the world. What are your peoples believe? What are the ancient peoples from your traditional, from your ancestors? And they all talk about the star brothers and sisters, or the star beings. So that's where that comes from. And basically, in closing, they're gonna keep on coming and making contact very carefully, because they don't want to change any timelines, or they don't want to push us into a particular way forward. And then that's just quickly to say, shameless plug, the book is coming out, Next Level Disclosure, Earth School. And then any questions?
Well, go back to the slide about your book, so we can just, hello, so we can see the book cover, and then you can tell us more detail about that book, because I know you've been working on Next Level Disclosure for quite some time.
Long time. So Next Level Disclosure is all about the contact that I had started in 1963, when I disappeared for a couple of days and got lost, and then was found in a steam engine next to the where the compartment is, where the coal used to be shoveled in. I was found there a few days later, and it starts then, and it tracks the entire story over right up until present day. And it talks about the different types of contact. I've only had, apart from when I was very young, that one when I was taken off world and in the craft, it explains everything that happened in the craft, what I saw, the other children that were there, but also only one other time that I can consciously remember that the physical body was taken off world and then returned again. Also got into a lot of trouble on that one because I was brought back into the vehicle, and there was like so many hours. It was like almost half of the night, and when I got back home, I got into a lot of trouble because they were saying, "Well, you that drive that you should have taken from that area in South Africa to that area in South Africa should have taken you maybe 2.5, 3 hours. And here you are now, half a day later. What on earth happened?" So that was only the second time. Everything else has been direct communication, either through downloads, or it has been through automatic writing, where I would just wait quietly, grab my pen, and then it would just be writing that would come through, and then I'd have to decipher it after that. And all of that, all of what I'd been working on, the work that I had done with different sites across South Africa, we went to about, must be just under 1,000 different sites, where there was like Adam's calendar, where there's different artifacts that are left, where there's stones, little round stones, and you bang them with a steel object and they ring like a bell. All these unusual things. Plus, in Greece, by experiencing Greece and going into one of the ancient sites where they found these incredible creatures and the skulls of them, and they took them out, and the energy in that area in Pekeremi, all of that is there. The trips to China and stuff, basically stuff that I've done, stuff that I've seen, and
Amazing.
different threads. It's all in there so that it doesn't get lost.
It's just amazing. I mean, like I said at the beginning of this, the countless experiences that you've had, real off-world, on-world, in Earth and people, you've just done so much, and it's just so lovely that you're able to give us your, testimony, your evidence, and the books. And your first book, the first book I read of yours, is called The Horse Girl, and we always make the morning. It is not about a little girl and horses. It is a
No,
horrific journey of a little girl who was so horrendously harmed by men in unimaginable ways that no little girl or little boy should ever suffer. And you mentioned that you were taken on a craft at 3 years old. You went off wandering in the garden, and you've met this being you called Da'ar, who is a
yeah,
scientist. There were other children there. There are just so many testimonies and just stories and information that you've given. I made a couple of notes when we were going through there. You mentioned that when Jacques, the Koldassian, was returning back to Koldas, the structure and the performance and the protocol of being on the beach, standing clear, the energy is intertwining with his own electromagnetic field, which allows him then to go into the craft. Some might call that beamed up, tractor beam. There's different levels of it. But my point is, you mentioned that his consciousness was in alignment with the craft. Now, years ago, the very first person I ever saw live talking about spacecraft with consciousness was my friend Alex Collier. And
oh wow.
this was in Mount Shasta years ago.
Yeah,
And because he just so needed, he was my inspiration for my own disclosure conferences, JISIC. And he was saying that the Andromedans, which is what his connection is, they literally have this entwinement, this DNA consciousness connection. So the ship will recognize
that's right.
individual
Yes.
beings. That's
Yeah.
why some craft are like they can't get in, they can't open the door, they don't know the code, they're never going to get into some of the craft that has been,
Yeah.
deliberately left around. They're not deliberately falling out the sky, they're not getting shot down. They've got super advanced technology. It's a setup, it's a psyop, it's a trap, so people don't fall for it. I think humanity at this stage, Bev, if you'll allow me, need to really step up in themselves and own their power, their common sense, and stop being in awe of people that seem to have all the answers, or say the Anunnaki or this or the Roman gods. We've really got to step up and just take control. You mentioned that the Koldassians believe in a divine being, a supreme being, and
Yes.
that being has a son, that their God has a son, or the God, or whatever. And you said that they'd made in the image of, there were children that were in the same image of, I forget which one, the God or the son. But for me, ultimately, we're all made in the same image because we are soul. We are energy. So it's got nothing to do with how we look. Otherwise, I'd be part elephant, part horse, part giraffe, part squirrel, part bear, part zebra. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, it's a signature soul frequency, which
Yes.
is the spark that's come from the creator. We also, you mentioned the peace contract, probably the wrong word,
Yeah.
the Peace Consolidation Act on this planet, as you know, and Dr. Michael Sala, my friend, your friend, you're going on his channel soon. You're going on Michael
Yes.
Sala's channel.
Listen.
You're going on our friend Miyoko Sano in Japan, and you're going on Kerry Cassidy. So, guys, look out for her going on bigger channels. Invite her, Beverli Rhodes, on your bigger channels, bigger than mine, please. Let's get this lady out there.
Yeah.
The Artemis Accords
Yes.
are an agreement that over 50 countries in this on this planet have
Yeah.
signed so far because they have space programs that they don't admit to the rest of the world. The governments and the
Uh-huh.
militaries are all aware of each country's technology, their advancements, but little people like Johnny and Josie and Daisy and Jack, they're kept in the dark, which to me is so wrong, which is why I do what I do. It's why you do what you do. It's why I
Mm.
have my conferences globally. So we tell it all. And so the Artemis Accords are extremely important. And there are, it's so funny when my camera does that. I don't know
It
why.
does it by
Hello,
itself. I
look at
saw
my
that.
big
Woo.
face. And I'm a giant. And it does make me laugh. And I don't know how to adjust it. JP set this up for me. He's like, here, Danny, do this, do that. I'm like, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I know. It's all a
Yeah,
bit above me, I'm afraid. I look at technology and I think, what am I supposed to do with this now? You know?
it's hilarious. It's hilarious. Oh my Lord. And even Kevin wasn't in the shot then, was he? Poor little Kev. He'll be jealous.
Oh,
Let's go to also, unless you want to say anything on that, but yesterday we were mentioned Tataria, and
yes.
some of the Tatarian states left in part are um, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan. I think these so-called elites that put themselves in those positions have targeted Kazakhstan, which is this, or is it Turkmenistan? I forget now. Stan, Stan with a big bit. Ha ha, the Satan words on the end of that. Oh, you guys are so clever. You're so clever. For those that know, you know. Too much to go into here. But they are Tatarian in nature, in architecture, which obviously I say Lemuria, and then that was taken out by Atlantis. Then
Yeah.
Atlantis was taken down, and then we had Tataria. Tataria was taken down, mostly all by the Anunnaki, several members of the Anunnaki and others of planet aliens, off planet basically. And now they're trying to do it again. They're trying to do it again. The children of Satan, the Rothschilds, etc., the bloodlines, the infiltrators, they're trying to do it again. So that's why we're obviously speaking out and sharing all the secrets. What would you like to say about Tataria, my love?
Tataria, we had a lot of discussions about Tataria. What we were very interested in is why was the obvious trade that was happening between the surface dwellers and those below the surface, including the ant people and the giants and others. And apparently, what had happened was they knew that the decision was going to come for Tartaria to be changed. And what they did is then at one point, the Off-Worlders, Caldesians, and others, it wasn't just Caldesians that were here, it were others as well. They had one last go at it. Then they said, we're going to have to close off all the entrances to Middle Earth and to those that live beneath the Earth because this is going to be basically flattened and changed. And this is where the Caldesians were quite adamant. We did not vote for this. We did not agree with this. But because we are part of the council and we are part of the decision that was made that this would happen, we will then stand fast and assist to make sure all of these beings are safe. So yes, there was a snapshot in time where everybody was trading with everybody else above on the surface and below the surface. Everybody was trading. Everybody knew everybody else. But I don't think that met with much approval for those higher ups, so they decided to change it.
You know, I heard, as we all hear many things over the years, that some of the inner earth entrances, of which there are a staggering amount,
True.
Many are protected, many are cloaked. Some were illegally and brutally shut down by the non-elite.
Yeah.
And it was said that a lot of these entrances were covered up during the 1970s, which would actually tie in with you sharing that the Koldassians were here from the 1960s.
Yeah. This is, and that is it. And they were actively not dark with a craft, but others that had crafts, they were actively going out and creating, you know, either a force field around it so that it was cloaked, you couldn't see it, or making sure that whatever the conditions were around that entrance were so difficult that little humans would not be able to access it. You know, you'd have to be pretty good at hiking and survival skills to be able to get to those entrances. What I understood, they had left about, I think there was one or two on each continent that were open, but they were so secluded and in such an awful area, it would have been very difficult to get to.
Let's also just share a moment that there are so many evidences and documents, and even in military situations and government situations with extraterrestrials who are our brothers and our sisters, not the bad ones, they can kiss my hairy ass, but the beautiful ones that enjoy the benevolence of the universe, because what happens on our planet is going to affect them. So
Yeah.
they're not all doing it out of the good of their hearts, of course, because they don't want to be bothered with I mean, they must look at this planet and go, what are you doing? But it doesn't mean we're not ready. And I'm done with those insults. And I'm done with oh, there's a prime directive. Really? Who wrote it, mate? Eh? Just like who wrote the Bible? Should we just stop with the lies? Because all that does, it diminishes the power in the individual to think and advocate for themselves. To not obey, to not fall under the cosh, to ignore the programming from birth to now, and to step up.
What
And
was interesting at that time is when they were closing down areas and making sure that the ant people went back. You know, the king of the ants was still alive at that time. Whereas unfortunately, a lot of the ant people have now moved off the planet. They've been taken elsewhere. At the time, which was also something that I was quite shocked when he said it. He said that the Chaldeans, in cooperation with other planetary leaders, had actually created an area called Epicot. And Epicot was set aside as if something was going to happen, that there was some of the leaders and maybe the scientists or whoever, that they would be taken to Epicot and they would be able to live there safely. But this is why a lot of the beings and those that are coming constantly, sometimes we are very close to, a major event, which is, we don't really want that to happen to us. But this is why they are watching. Then, but do not confuse it with the fact that some people think, oh well, it doesn't really matter. We can do what we want because they're going to come and get us and evacuate us anyway. That's not the case. We do need to check ourselves. We do need to see what we're buying into, and we do need to watch what we're doing as far as nuclear and other goes. Because as it stands, even in the 80s, Earth did have the ability to basically blow the whole lot up to shribbins, and that's why they always will keep a close eye on us, because the shock waves and the knock-on effect, if Earth was taken out of that whole structure of the planets, could you imagine the chaos? So they will keep an eye on us too. But I don't think they will intervene or they will do too much unless it was going to be a near extinction event like a meteor hurtling towards Earth. I have heard that they have done that before. They have pushed it off its trajectory and it's sort of just missed us, which is fine. They won't actually arrive en masse to evacuate everybody off the planet.
so when we hear about all the different missiles that have been intercepted by
Yeah.
what we're told en masse by many, 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 many people, this called the Galactic Federation, which is I'll stick with that, just the Galactic, some kind of military protection. But are you saying that the Cardassians were also in part using technology to stop missiles hitting our planet?
That to stop meteors, there was one that they assisted along with others on the council. So in those days, it was the Council of Five, and then it changed to the Council of Nine. They then all agreed and voted again, because it's a free voting system. You can either participate or not. to come. They knew that that particular near level extinction event was coming. If that meteor had actually hit us, I think we would have been in a whole heap of trouble. They did agree that they would work together just to push it, or whatever it is they did to get it out of the way, so that we're not in the firing line of the meteor.
Right. And do you know who you mentioned the Council of Five? Now we know this, the Council of 27 and 9 and 5 and 10 and all the numbers in the world. The Council of or the Nine, or which is in the book, the Nine is in the book, The Only Planet of Choice. I fascinated. I've just started reading that again. Haven't read it since the 90s, since it came out. It's so mind-blowing. But so you're saying the Council of Five agreed with the Coldassians. So who were the other councils? Who were the planets or civilizations that made up this Council of Five that you're aware of?
What can only say what I can recall, because I don't recall all the names of all the different planets, but there was a majority of them, because above all the planets and all the beings are aware that if this planet was meant, if it did blow up, or if we blew ourselves up or caused any nuclear problems and disasters, everyone is aware of what that would mean and how that would impact them. But we also get in the space fold, or the space hold meeting, there was also, which was very interesting for me, I found very interesting, is that Earth 2, Ceton 2, was also there. So we have us on Earth 1, but then there's an Earth 2 as well, which is ourselves in a different timeline, taking a different path. And I was very lucky. I was able to see and visualize and know and understand what was happening to the me on Earth 2. They were there as well. And representatives from pretty much all the beings and all the cultures voted on that, is to not blow up the meteor that was heading to us, but to change the trajectory so that we were safe.
I've heard another person who I also trust their information, and that's Chris O'Connor, former SSP, has spent time on Saturn, was at one point part of a high council, remembers it very vividly and very clearly, a very gentle, quiet individual who would also, he told me about Earth too, same thing. So it's again nice to validate other people. I don't think you've met him yet. Have you met Chris
No,
O'Connor?
never
No, you
met
don't even know
Chris.
each other. Yeah, I'm sure you'll meet one day. Just taking a step back to what I was saying about how many of the extraterrestrials, beautiful, benevolent, loving, that were living on this planet, some of the places there they were living was Paradise, a place in California that was bombed and burnt, and these beings were unalived by the deep state, the cabal, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call these maggots. Also, Maui, when Maui was taken out, there was a sacred site in Lanai, a sacred site on Maui that was targeted. Direct energy weapons were used. And how you prove that is looking at the debris left. There were some blue umbrellas, a blue roof on a house, because the laser weapons that they use, not just the negative ETs, but the negative humans, they use those, and for some amazing apparent reason, that the blue, the color blue, is not affected by the laser weapon. Go look it up if you haven't heard about it. The island of Maui. On in LA, a part of LA was taken out. That was for many different reasons, horrendous, horrific, and that idiot, yes, idiot, non-human, subhuman, Gavin Newscomb, I never forget just coming on and saying, let's build LA bigger and better. Oh my God, you have just torched and assassinated and unalived hundreds and hundreds of people, countless, we don't know the numbers, above ground, underground. It's just incredible. And Kauai, the island of Kauai, where I used to live, there are beings that live there, beautiful, benevolent beings that live there. And when I was there in 2002, I went to an event at a man's house. His name, he calls himself Starman, Ken Jackson. And he made a new CD because CDs were still a thing in those days. And I was
Yeah.
on a spiritual tour with all these people on a spiritual discovery. And I knew I just had to get to Kauai. So when it came up and I heard it was on Kauai, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going. And I remember sitting in this living room at night and looking around the room and going, oh my God, alien. Then I didn't know. I mean, calling them aliens actually rude. But I was like, alien,
Yeah.
alien. But the one that was the strangest one was right. There was a whole line of us sitting on sofas and chairs, and then chairs at the end. And at the very end, there was one tall man, and he had dark brown curly hair, very white skin, and his eyes were the most bulbous I've ever seen. And he was
Wow.
trying to settle himself on the chair. He just could not get comfortable. And I was trying not to bun in on it, as we say in English. Stop bunning. Trunky, want to bun? And looking to go, I was sitting and my heart was pounding. I'm like, what going on? Ian, because
I can
something
see you
inside you.
doing that too.
Yes, I was in my, was I in my 20s then? I forget, but oh my God. And the woman next to him was protecting him. She was a little Asian, Chinese looking lady. And that's not racist. That's just, addressing, using information to try and highlight what someone looked like. And she glared at me because she realized I'd clocked it. And I was like,
Uh,
it was amazing. And then as the evening went on, everyone's got their eyes shut or in meditation. I
yeah.
look directly across and there's a big glass window and Ken is sitting. So his reflection, the back of his head is reflecting in the glass and he's reading. And I'm staring at him and an ET came out at the top of his head. It came up like this, like my arm and my
Yeah.
hand came
Wow.
and looked at me. I'm telling you. I'm telling you, it was
Wow.
amazing, terrifying, startling, and a night to remember. Those stories are in my book, Angels, Demons, and Aliens. But yeah, incredible. So again, for people to honor your experiences, honor your feelings, tell your stories, read Beverly's books. It's just incredible what we all have access to. And sometimes it helps us remember our memories or validate
Yes.
a
Yeah.
memory, doesn't it, Bev?
It does. It does. And this it's very important because I think that the energies, the way that everything is changing now, the energies will awaken and bring people into themselves and to get them to understand this is my new journey. My journey is awakening. My journey is to be the best I can be, but to be me because you are you. Only person that knows you is you. So find out more about yourself. Go within as a part as opposed to going outside and trying to pick and choose something that is similar to you because everyone is unique.
Absolutely. Wow. I don't know if you heard that ring in there. That's my beautiful monk friend. I love him. So many beautiful people on the planet, all doing the best they can, as we're doing here, Bev, you and I sharing disclosure, full disclosure, naming, claiming, owning information that we just encourage everyone else to look at. Were there any final slides to share here? Um,
No, those were all of the slides, and I hope everybody enjoyed them. And I think I'm just very grateful that after all these years, I'm able to share what happened in Zinkwazi, and what is still in place because it is still in place. I believe that the Q-base individuals and their families, because obviously their families, my eldest daughter's already 46. So it would have been, if I was going to hand the baton on to my lot, it would be them that would be, if anybody arrived, provide a safe home for them. This is what we do. And it's getting handed down ancestrally from the older ones like us that went through that originally. The new younger ones are coming up and say, yeah, I'll look after him. If somebody is here, I'll make sure that that person is safe. It's still happening. I can guarantee you it is still happening. It's still an underground type of force field with these individuals that are going to protect, look after, take care of, feed, house, clothe, whatever you need to do to keep them here so that they can learn about us, share their own truths, share our truths, and then make sure they get home safely.
Amazing. Well, Bev, thank you again so much for coming back for part two. Tell people how they can contact you, have one-to-one private sessions with you.
Yes, if you would like to book a session, I've sort of adopted my diary. It is online on my website, which is the awakeningacademy.co.uk. Or if you're not sure about the times and the time zone I'm in, you can get hold of me directly via email, beverly.rhodes3@gmail.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Beverli Rhodes, always an honor and a joy to spend time with you and sharing your incredible information, lots and lots.